Germany's federal parliament, the Bundestag, has a weird problem. According to the German constitution, the Bundestag is supposed to accommodate 598 members. That's bigger than the US Congress, a considerable size for a country the size of Germany. But due to the way German elections work, the number of members has actually been growing over the past decades to a whopping 736. The current size of the Bundestag makes it the second largest lower house in the world, second only to China's. And incredibly, the German Bundestag is also bigger than the entire European Parliament. This of course begs the question, how did it get so oversized? Why is it still growing? And is this strange and expensive situation finally going to be resolved? Germany's Bundestag has reached its size because of Germany's mixed-member proportional representation system. Now you're probably thinking, what is that supposed to mean? Well, it's about the way Germany finds who gets a seat and who doesn't after an election. In general, countries have basically two different ways of doing this. Plurality systems, where a country is divided into districts and the candidate with the most votes wins the seat for that district, like in the United States, the UK or India. Then there are proportional representation systems, where seats are allocated according to the share of votes each party receives. Examples for countries who use that system are Brazil, all of Scandinavia, Poland, Turkey, and Israel. But some countries also combine those two systems. For example, Germany. Half of the seats in the German Bundestag are reserved for candidates who won their own district. The other half of seats are so-called party list seats, that each party gets proportional to the number of votes they receive nationally. But this also means the Germans have to cast two votes at every national election, one for their local candidate, the Erststimme or first vote, and another one on the state level, the Zweitstimme or second vote. Now, this is when it starts to get tricky. When a party wins more direct seats than list seats in the German election system, they actually have a higher share of representatives in parliament as the percentage who voted for them. This means that similarly to elections in the United States, the number of seats each party gets isn't proportional to the popular vote results. However, in 2012, it turned out that unlike in the US, this way of electing officials was actually unconstitutional in Germany. And finally, all of this led to a reform that started growing the Bundestag. Before 2013, the parties in the German Bundestag had about 20 to 30 so-called overhang seats in pretty much every election cycle. Overhang seats were given to make the number of direct candidates of each party equal to the number of list candidates. In 2012 though, the Federal Constitutional Court in Germany ruled that the existing electoral law was unconstitutional, as it didn't reflect the will of the people accurately, and ordered a revision. In the same year, the governing parties brought a reform to the table. But the reformers did of course not want to lose their party members any seats. No, they instead came up with a brilliant solution, adding levelling seats to compensate for the unconstitutional overhang seats, essentially doubling the number of extra seats. A decision benefiting the political parties in power, considering every member of the Bundestag is paid over 120,000 euros per year. Now, while in the first election after this reform, the number of extra seats only rose by 10, 5 years later, in 2017, we saw an increase to 111 extra seats and a record number of 709 seats in total. And this is exactly when Germans started to realize that the reform and the increasingly fluctuating size of the Bundestag could become a huge problem. In 2020, the parties that came up with the first reform apparently had realized what it's led to. They tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The second reform they passed was not ambitious enough, and in the upcoming elections, the Bundestag grew once again to the 736 members it has today. But there finally seems to be light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. The new German government, made up of Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals, also called the Traffic Light Coalition because of the colours of its parties, has finally decided to plan a proper reform that would abolish both overhang seats and levelling seats, and also limit the number of MPs to only 630. The reform has passed with a simple majority in March of 2023. However, it is also being heavily criticised by the opposition, as it means that smaller parties that are very popular in specific regions could lose all seats in parliament. And opposition leader Friedrich Merz has announced he will fight the new reform in constitutional court again. Now, while the new reform sounds like a bad compromise and probably also is, we must keep in mind the currently oversized parliament costs German taxpayers over €500 million every year and is arguably less efficient than a downsized one. Why not come up with a whole new system or limit the number of seats even lower? I don't know. Politicians, I guess. It's hard to say which way of electing representatives is really best. This is already made clear by the vastly different opinions that exist about this topic. But there might be one thing we can be sure about. If you let politicians set the rules for themselves, things can go very wrong very quickly, and it might take them decades to fix the issue.